Tony Abbott's government swept to power in 2013 with a defining promise.
Stop the boats.
Stop the boats.
Stop the boats.
A new agency called the Australian Border Force was established, with former Queensland Police Officer Roman Quaedvlieg at the helm as Commissioner. But less than 2 years later, he was stood down over an allegation that he helped his girlfriend secure a job with Border Force. In 2018, after two separate investigations, Quaedvlieg's employment was terminated. An integrity commission found he'd acted corruptly by helping his girlfriend. Quaedvlieg's relationship with Dutton became bitter. The former Border Force boss alleged the minister's staff asked him to intervene in a visa matter involving Mr Dutton's friend. The minister, in turn, attacked his credibility.
He was a man who had groomed a girl 30 years younger than himself.
Roman Quaedvlieg has never spoken in detail about his time in the heart of Australia's national security machinery until now. You left Border Force under controversial circumstances and you were found to have acted corruptly in lobbying to get your girlfriend a job in Border Force, and your relationship was also undisclosed for a period of time. Do you accept that you acted improperly?
No, I don't accept that, and I haven't accepted that from the outset, and I still don't accept it. But suffice to say that after 3 years, 5 departments, a number of agencies, a bevy of lawyers and an unenumerated cost, we're at a point where there are no criminal charges and there is a finding by the Commission for Law Enforcement Integrity of corruption, which I reject. And I reject it on the basis of, and I explained this the other day to someone, it's like the folklore Dennis Denuto representing Daryl Kerrigan in the High Court, and he gets asked the question, what section of the Constitution are you referring to, counsel? And he says, section? What section? It's the vibe of the thing. There's no section.
But if we want to just talk about the vibe of it, isn't it just a really simple question at the core, which is, did you, as the boss of Border Force, try to influence the process to get your girlfriend a job there? That
is the core of the allegation, and it's one I've denied.
So you didn't at all involve yourself in that process?
No, in fact, I took steps to distance myself from that. And where there was a conversation between me and subordinates in relation to her interests, I was quite explicit about her not receiving any advantage on a number of occasions. But
you hadn't declared, though, that you were in a relationship with her?
Yeah, but that's a separate issue. That's a separate allegation. The code of conduct which led to my dismissal, one of the sub-allegations was that I failed to declare my relationship with her to the minister. That argument is made on someone else's interpretation of the relationship. It's not based on when I say the relationship commenced.
But isn't part of even if you think that you were not having any undue influence, the mere fact that you're the boss asking about it does give influence?
Yeah, so you're talking here about a conflict of interest and a potential conflict of interest and a perception of a conflict of interest and all of that. I say I managed that by giving specific and explicit instructions not to give Sarah an unfair advantage in her candidacy for an ABF job.
You had a bitter falling out with the Home Affairs Minister, Peter Dutton, in which a lot of accusations flew in both directions. Would you do anything differently if you had your time again?
So just to contextualise, I had no falling out with Peter Dutton at a ministerial interaction. In fact, he was a relatively good minister to work for. I did take exception to the what I call the unministerial comments he made under parliamentary privilege, which I thought were impugning of my character. In fact, had he made those comments outside of parliamentary privilege, I think there would have been a case for defamation. I thought that that behaviour was unwarranted, and it certainly offended me. I, in retrospect, would not do anything differently in relation to that particular episode.
Would you do anything differently in relation to anything else?
Could I have done a better job of managing the perception of a conflict of interest? The answer is absolutely yes.
As the former head of Border Force, do you have any thoughts about the Ruby Princess debacle?
Yeah, I do. If you take a holistic view of the way Australia has responded to the impacts of the COVID virus, comparatively, we've done very well in global terms. You could argue potentially that we didn't shut the borders quickly enough, but hindsight is always 20/20 vision, and I think it's indisputable that the Ruby Princess event was an accelerant, both in terms of the number of infections as well as the dispersal of infections across our nation. I found it somewhat unedifying with the finger pointing between agencies. It's a very complex ecosystem in terms of how cruise liners in particular are managed. There's both an independent set of responsibilities, but collectively that ecosystem should have done better.
For many years, the public was told that terrorism was the greatest threat to Australia's national security, and for the past 18 months or so, we haven't really heard very much about it. Is it as grave a threat as we have been led to believe?
I don't think it's a binary question of whether terrorism is a threat or not. I think it is, but it's an enduring one, but it will spike from time to time. But if you look at how terrorism has affected societies, I think terrorism does have that permeating effect on a population, which in Australia at the very least, we've managed to curtail.
When the Abbott government was elected, it immediately implemented the Stop the Boats policy. We hear some alarming stories out of the detention facilities on Nauru and Manus. Do you think Australia has the right balance between border protection and human rights?
It did. I think in respect of our offshore processing centres on both Manus and Nauru, and I say this with hand on heart, every bureaucrat and every politician that I discussed this with at the time of executing Operation Sovereign Borders had the intent of offshore processing being a temporary, an interim placement measure, a processing facility, if you will. However, we are now some 5 years on from that, and there are still cohorts on those islands. I don't think that's a situation that can be countenanced as an appropriate balance between border security and compassion and care for humanity.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Lee.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.